This is the fourth in a series of short talks on self-fulfilling prophecies. We've been viewing self-fulfilling prophecies as beliefs that make themselves come true. An important toxic example is the belief that violence is inevitable, which increases the likelihood that violence will occur. Now, what links a belief to its fulfillment in reality? As a rule, the belief is going to set the stage for certain actions or behaviors that are in line with the belief. Here are some examples. A person's belief that I can learn piano leads them to put in time and effort to practice and so improve their piano skills. A teacher's belief that a child is smart leads to more interaction and extra attention to that child, which strengthens the child academically and helps the child perform better on measures that are taken as indications of how smart he or she is. That example comes from Robert Rosenthal's famous research, Pygmalion in the Classroom, which was about teacher expectancies and the effect of those expectancies on student performance. A third example is that a person's belief that violence will threaten them may lead them to join a gang and arm themselves, but those actions immerse them in a world full of threats of violence, fulfilling their prophecy. And finally, the example I'm going to develop for a few minutes, a leader's belief that arms control is possible leads them to support negotiations on reduction of nuclear weapons. It's kind of a Cold War example, but it serves our purposes here because it allows me to talk about something called grit, G-R-I-T. With regard to that example, let me talk about some of the nuts and bolts of arms control negotiations. One strategy in negotiating was proposed by a psychologist named Charles Osgood, and it is called GRIT, G-R-I-T, which stands for Graduated and Reciprocated Initiatives in Tension Reduction. It's an idea that uses psychological principles to construct a plan for moving the world away from nuclear catastrophe. And some would argue that this approach really kept us safe during the Cold War and allowed us to survive it. Grit is not unique. Elements of it can be seen in many successful negotiations, and attempts to use elements of grit are probably part of a lot of negotiations. But I think it takes some mindful, thoughtful planning and execution in order to be successful. The main psychological principle in grit is reciprocation, which is a tendency that we have as human beings to copy the other person in social situations. And reciprocation ranges all the way from yawning being contagious and people copying each other's body language up to the copying or the attempted matching of ideas and concessions and things that might be under negotiation. With reciprocation on our side, knowing how it works in human psychology, it can be used in negotiation to proceed through a series of small steps toward lower tension in a conflict. Another psychological principle to me could be termed the halo effect. And By that, I mean a change in the atmosphere of trust in a negotiation that can occur as the parties gain more and more experience with each other and see that mutual benefit is possible from these conversations across the negotiating table. The halo effect can be built upon pure self-interest. You may never get warm and fuzzy about the person on the other side, but paradoxically, perhaps, it comes into play through interaction of negotiators. And it can only happen because those people have chosen not to avoid each other. They have opened the door to these conversations in which that kind of trust building based on self-interest can happen. Now, Osgood's ideas were presented a number of years ago in his book called An Alternative to War or Surrender. And I would recommend that book to students of nonviolence who are interested in the reality side of good intentions. You know, we could say that all roads are paved with good intentions, the road to hell and the road to other places as well. Those intentions or beliefs or predictions are sort of at the heart of this topic of self-fulfilling prophecies. But we need skills in order to do some of the work that will fulfill our prophecies. We need probably nonviolence training, but we also need an understanding of these strategic, step-by-step skills, like Osgood is talking about in his grit framework. Again, graduated and reciprocated initiatives in tension reduction. Bottom line here is that beliefs don't become self-fulfilling automatically. Work has to be done by the person holding the belief. Some of it is intentional, some of it is unintentional. Some of it is just accidental, some of it may be unskilled, and some of it, importantly, may be skilled. And that's something for us to study and practice. I'll have more in the next video.